Julie Osmond.
Here.
Alexander Williams.
Okay, next on the agenda is we have our first public participation with the council. If you would like to address the council, please come forward to the podium. There's a place for you to put your name and your address, and then you have 5 minutes.
Hi, my name's Jackson Rose. I live at the Cedar Patio, Camden Cedar Patio Homes. And a man is trying to help the veterans. His name is Alan Reed. Believe he, job security might be on the line. I was asked to write an affidavit for Alan Reed and state all the problems that we had at the Camden Senior Patio Homes the last year and a half. And so Alan Reed said he'd step up and try to help me on some of the situations that I have over there. And I have expressed it to Rick Basher and Steve Rasmussen, and we will probably try to take care of that problem. But Alan Reed said that he was an honorable citizen here in Cameron, and so were the other ones. But the other ones got involved with some devious activity, and so now Alan seems to be the man that stepped up and is the law-abiding citizen. So trying to just say that maybe we can protect Alan Reed and his job, and he can continue on being a VA counselor and things, and I hope everything gets cleared up next day or two or something, but I thought I'd kind of mention to him. I don't know, there's no pen here, so, but I get a, just thought I might mention it to you that we have tried numerous times to work on this, and I think we have enough people now that it's involved that it'll probably get taken care of, you know. But there's some contract issues, there's some shoddy maintenance issues, there was some drug running, there's still got that over there, but it's slowing down. And there was some other issues that don't need to be, you know, brought out and nothing like that right now. But I tried to notify as many people as I could that there was a problem. And I don't know if they were undercover, but I called them and I told the manager, if you ever need anybody with evidence or a witness, you can ask me, because I saw everything, and I tried to call the police. So, and I did that. So, y'all have a nice day.
Thank you.
See you later.
Anyone else? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Let me read that. There's just one item.
Okay.
Item A, motion to approve the minutes of the July 18, 2022 regular session.
Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
By saying aye? Aye. I guess I should have asked if there was any requesting item for the consent agenda. Okay. The consent agenda passes with a vote of 3 in favor and 2 absent. Okay. You don't have any appointments at this time.
I do have one to review.
Okay.
In your packet is some information on the Robbers annual meeting. It's in October 27th and 28th at Spring
employees, and they are in the process of filling out ballots. They'll be doing that this month. So this is just for review, and then it'll come back at the next meeting. If you guys will check your calendars and see if anybody wishes to go. Rogers pays for, the event, the city, just out the mileage of the town.
And this is where,
This is gonna be in Springfield.
okay, and the dates.
It is October 27th and 28th, will be overnight, the night of October 27th.
Okay.
Usually they have their annual meeting and elect new board members and such, so that's why we have 2 delegates there.
Okay.
All right.
I believe it is time for the city manager's report.
Thank you very much. I had two things to say. One, I was happy to report that we were notified by MOCAN that we were awarded a $500,000 grant for Harris Street. And I wanted to thank MOCAN, who worked hard for that. Our representative, we have President MOCAN here, and Tim, who's our Vice President. Thank you, Mr. Jarvis, and thank you, Tim, and thank you, MOCAN, for that great accomplishment. Now, that's a $1.2 million project, so the city's portion of that is still $769,000. But we get nearly half of it done that way. This is one of our highest priorities. We'll begin to work on the details of that because we have that, and we have the issue of Godfrey Street, and we have the issue of Northland Drive. So we're going to put all that together. We'll come back to the Public Works Committee, and now given this new indication, we'll see how we can do all of those projects with our existing funds and with the transportation tax. Yes, ma'am.
When you say Harris, does that mean from Grand to where?
Fourth to eighth. Fourth to eighth,
And is that sidewalks on both sides?
yes.
So the place on Harris where I can almost get a ticket because I dodged going to the other side, that's not gonna get fixed?
Where was that one here?
4th to 8th.
Yeah, it's right between the housing complexes, the Meadow Acres and then.
No, that would be further north than that.
Yes. Oh,
South, it'll be south of that.
People's cars go like this on it, so they go on the other lane.
Well, in answer to your good question, Julie, what happens is we can do a full rebuild of sidewalks and streets and gutters and everything. One of the things that we've been talking about is doing less than a full rebuild, but for more roads, doing more milling and filling. And so when we come back to Public Works Committee, we can look at that.
Well, and 8th Street to Grand has already been done. It probably just, yes, it has. I was there when they did it.
I bet you were.
And,
But it's awful right now.
well, and so then that's where we've gotta do the fixing of it rather than the complete
Well,
rebuild.
something. But when you said Harris, I was like, yay, but that's not that far.
Yeah.
Well, and just, the costs of these things keep going up. So we've got, 4 blocks now, and, it's 1.2 million. And so sometimes people are frustrated with this, well, we're paying that tax, how come you haven't got everything fixed? The expense of this is just until you get involved with it. And, I'll also say kudos to, Mr. Wines and Mr. Garvis, because they're both volunteering and we get a place at the table and good things are happening.
And back to what you were saying, MSP, part of that is we could use part of the transportation tax for the debt service and bond for part of that to do those quicker and do them now when the costs are cheaper.
Well, and I believe that's what the Public Works Committee talked about, was going to, bring to the council.
Yes. We'll do some more work on that.
Okay?
Okay, and the second item is we had our finance committee at 5 o'clock, and I believe the council then wants to schedule another finance committee meeting at 5 p.m. on Wednesday downstairs, and we'll see if we can finish up with that.
Is that all you have?
That's what I have, thank you very much.
Anybody have any questions? Okay, under unfinished business, we have a second and final reading of Bill 2022-25. City clerk will now read the bill.
Bill 2022-25, an ordinance authorizing an amendment to the agreement by and between the City of Cameron, Missouri and Alliance Water Resources, Inc. for management and operations services at the Cameron wastewater facility.
I will entertain a motion to pass Bill 2022-25 on a second and final reading
So
by
moved.
roll call.
Second.
Yes, Zach is.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do we have any discussion?
I have nothing.
Dennis M. Clark,
Yes.
Becky Curtis,
Yes.
Julie Osmond,
Yes.
Alexander Williams, Roy Estes.
Okay, so Bill 2022-25 passes on the second and final reading with a vote of 3 in favor and 2 absent. The next bill is a second and final reading on Bill 2022-26. The clerk will read the bill.
Bill 2022-26, an ordinance authorizing the city manager of the City of Cameron, Missouri to enter into a professional services agreement with HDR, preparing an engineering report for the wastewater treatment plant.
I will entertain a motion to pass Bill 2022-26 on a second and final reading by roll call.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, Zach?
Discussion?
Becky Curtis,
Yes.
Julie Osmond,
Yes.
Alexander Williams, Roy Estes, Dennis M. Clark.
Yes.
We have a second and final reading on Bill 2022-27. The clerk will read the bill.
Bill 2022-27, an ordinance authorizing the city manager of the City of Cameron, Missouri to enter into a professional services agreement with HDR for preparing an engineering report for the water distribution system.
I will entertain a motion to pass Bill 2022-27 on a second and final reading.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Julie Osmond,
Yes.
Alexander Williams, Roy Estes, Dennis M. Clark,
Yes.
Becky Curtis.
Yes.
Bill 2022-27 passes with a vote of 3 in favor and 2 absent. Okay, I think at this time we have an audit presentation.
Council, Mayor Pro Tem, I know I said that backwards. We have the privilege tonight of having Mike Williams with Sickage LLC. Mike has been our auditor in charge for about the last 7 years. This is the first year with the Sickage company of the audit report. We have a report, so I hope
We have you go over it.
Yeah. Carmen, so yeah, again, my name is Mike Williams. I'm the partner in charge of the city's audit. We've recently issued some reports that look like this. So I know we've gotten some PDFs maybe, or we've distributed those. So what I plan on doing is going through these, and it won't take too long, but just kind of summarize what I think is important or different than last year. And if you have any questions as we go along, it's fine. There are questions at the end, is fine too. But I was going to start with this. The main report is the one with the picture on the front of it. It's the main audit report. It has the auditor's report in it, the audited financial statements, and things like that. And the other 2 reports are further explanation related to the audit. So anyway, to get into it, there's a table of contents, and right past the table of contents, the first thing is the auditor's report. So this is on Sickage letterhead. And again, we were Hochschild Bloom Company. We joined Sickage because they've got a great governmental audit practice and fit well with us. And They do really great work. So anyway, that's one thing. But on the other, on a more important note, there's a general information about an audit in here for the first page. In the middle of page 2, well, there at the top, it says the opinions, and that's the opinion of the auditors, and I think that's important. It says in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the financial position. So anyway, that's good. There's no qualifications to the report, no modifications. It's also called a clean opinion. So, and it's similar to what the cities had before, but I think that's important. Okay. So that's the opinion of the auditors, and then we get into some of the numbers, which begin on page 6 and page 7. And the first thing I was going to talk about is on page 6, and I like pages 6 and 7 because they're a big picture summary of the activities of the city this year in 2021. It's because the city has a September 30, 2021 year end, and this compares it to the 2020 year end. So the first set of numbers are the governmental activities, like the general fund, park fund, things like that, the business type activities, water, sewer, electric, and then there's a total. So since this is I wanted to focus on the totals on the right side of the page. You can see the total 21 assets around $78,534,000 compared to around $65,584,000 the prior year. So some increases there. And I was going to get into some of that information related to them. There were a little more interesting changes this year in the numbers of the statements than the prior year. So I was going to go through some of those. But anyway, that's the totals. Then there's some deferred amounts and liabilities, or things like the bonds, the payable, things like that. So they total $21,870,000 this year compared to around $14,924,000 last year. So some big increases in the liabilities also. But when you compare the assets minus the liabilities and deferred amounts, that's called called net position for this presentation of the statements. And so net position for the government-wide statements is similar to retained earnings for a regular company. So we see the bottom line on the right side, bottom of page 6, it shows the total net position increase from around $51,293,000 last year to around $54,656,000 this year. So overall, a lot of improvements, improvement in the net position, bottom line, and some increases in the assets and liabilities also. Okay, then on page 7, similar type of information. Top part of the page for this is like a P&L, summary of revenues and expenses. And this is summary of operations for a fiscal period. So this is over the fiscal year. On the right side of the page, it shows total assets around $21,318,000 compared to around $18,570,000 the prior year. So increases there. Various comparisons of the functional expenses for the year. So we can see the total expenses have increased some, not as much, but they were $17,419,000 last year versus $17,527,000 this year. But again, it shows that overall increase of about $3,790,000. And then it reconciles at the bottom of the page to the net position, which we talked about on the previous page. So increases in revenue, some increases in expenses. All right. So that's the big picture summary. Then I was going to get into some of the detail, and the detail funds begin on page 14. And page 14 then, these are the larger governmental funds reported on this page. And the general fund is the main operating fund of the city. So I was going to mention a few items on that. General fund, so this is the balance sheet, so it reports things like cash and liabilities and fund balance. So the cash and investment total for the general fund is around $1,693,000. Total assets are around $2,795,000. Has some liabilities around $300,000. And again, the difference between all those in this case is called fund balance. So the general fund balance is around $2,472,000, but some of that is non-spendable, some of it's committed, and so the unassigned fund balance is around $2,097,000. So I know it sounds like a lot of different numbers. We've got cash and total assets and fund balances, but this is required by government auditing standards, and so this type of presentation. But sometimes people ask you, well, what is your fund balance, or what is your unrestricted fund balance? And those are those amounts. Also, one of the new items on the page is the Park Improvement Fund. And I'll get into that in just a second. So if we go to page 16, So page 16, that's a new item, so that started during the 2021 fiscal year. But we can see the general fund, I was gonna talk about the general fund revenues again, it's the main operating fund of the city. Total revenues around $5,210,000, total expenditures around $5,561,000, so more revenues than expenditures. And then there's other financing sources of lease proceeds and then transfers in. So then overall, there's a positive net change in fund balance of positive $106,000. Negative reconciles to fund balance on the page. So that's the general fund activity. But then there was the new park fund, so I was gonna mention that. We've got a new sales tax, various expenses, a lot of capital outlay related to the park project. And then the other sources and uses shows the $7,065,000 new debt that was issued during the fiscal year. And so that is why the fund balance increased so much. It's primarily the proceeds of the debt minus what was spent, plus the sales tax. And it ended up the year with a fund balance around $5,799,000. So, big new numbers and a column on that page. So, a couple pages after that then is the proprietary funds. So these are enterprise funds, are more like regular businesses. So the assets are listed on this page, the capital assets, things like the land and infrastructure. And then it has liabilities in that position reported on page 18. And then on page 19 then is a summary of the revenues and expenses. Page 19 amounts are reconciled to page 18. So just to talk about page 19, it shows total operating revenues at the top of the page, operating expenses. Then there's non-operating revenues and expenses. And the third line from the bottom shows change in net position. So you see there's an increase in the electric fund for the year, increasing its net position around $10,913,000. Increase in the water wastewater fund of $125,000, increasing it to around $16,575,000. And some decrease in the solid waste fund, about $53,000. And its net position decreased to around $105,000. So to me, that's just a big picture summary of those individual funds for the year. There's a cash flow statement for those three funds on pages 20 and 21. Wasn't going to talk about that much, but then on page 22 begins the notes to the financial statements. So, note A is a summary of significant accounting policies, and those don't change much from year to year. So I was going to go ahead and flip to page 29. But because page 29 begins the first detailed note, and sometimes you want to know what your cash and investments, if that's secured. And this says note B1 says that your cash deposits are secured by letters of credit issued by the Federal Home Loan Bank, so that's important. Then there's sometimes you want to know what your investments are in. If there's anything like hedge funds or things like that that could be out there, but you're invested in standard certificates of deposit and money market funds, and those total investments are around $11,205,000. Let's see, and then the next couple pages after that, we get to page 31, and I wanted to talk about capital assets because capital assets are things like the land and construction, infrastructure, building equipment, all those types of things. And so when you place that stuff in service, it begins to depreciate. So there's a cost of all those assets that get recorded on the books. And then that bottom third of that schedule on page 31 says accumulated depreciation. Because once you purchase an asset, it begins depreciating. Unless it's land, we don't depreciate land. But you can see the depreciation on here. And so overall, sometimes what you will look at is the bottom line of the capital assets and see if those amounts have been increasing over the years or if they've been depreciating faster than replacing them. So in this case, the bottom line shows that there was an increase for the year of construction projects, infrastructure, things like that. So that's the governmental funds. The next couple pages, pages 32, 33, have the enterprise funds. And we can see on the bottom of page 33 that there was also some decrease in the enterprise fund. So those actually decreased from around $25,342,000 to around $25,139,000. So not a whole lot of a decrease, but $25 million. So not much difference, but that's just a rule of thumb related to capital assets. Okay. After that, then, page 34 starts the long-term debt. So again, a couple of changes in the long-term debt for the fiscal year. On page 34, kind of in the middle of the page, there's a schedule. It says governmental activities, and there, the first couple of line items show the series 2012 A and B certificates of participation. So we can see those two amounts were paid off. There's also the lease purchase agreement that was showed, is also included on here. We had some additions and some reductions on that. And then we had the Series 2021 certificates of participation for around $8,705,000. So there's a little bit of description of that on page 35, so that you're familiar, the 2021 certificates paid off the 2012 A and B certificates, and also provided refundings for, well, those refundings plus cash for the park project. So anyway, some activity related to the 21 certificates affected a lot of the funds related to the fiscal year. So that was one thing. The top of page 35 then has long-term debt information for the water, sewer, and other enterprise funds. And that's important. That's the amount of long-term debt that the city is required to pay in the future. Was it paid down? Did you have additional debt? Is it on schedule? Things like that. So those are the significant changes in the long-term debt. The next few pages just have more information related to the debt. Page 39, page 40 begins the pension plan. And there's a couple things on pension plans that sometimes you want to know if your pension plan is, has a deficit, or like you hear a lot of pension plans or not. And on bottom of page 42 shows that there was the change in the net pension liability. So this is what the city's pension is, a new loggers plan. And loggers actuary reports this information to us related to the net pension asset or liability. So this actually shows an asset in the plan, the bottom of page 42, of a positive of $3,326,000. So that's not a deficit reporting like you hear a lot of other government plans. So that's good. There's other information for the pension plan for the rest of the page 43, and then page 44 starts some disclosures on the other pension plan. It's a deferred comp plan for the employees. Then note G is interfund assets and liabilities and advances. I think that's similar to what we've had before. Note H is disclosure of property taxes, information on land held for resale, risk management. That's just what insurance the city has. Page 46 gets into the commitment to contingencies. Operating lease on page 47 has a joint venture related to the Great Northwest Commission. So, and then note N is tax abatements. If you have any of those, you've got a few tax abatement agreements. Top of page 48 has some prior period adjustments, some subsequent events, things that happen after the end of the year. Deficit balance related to the community center fund, and future accounting pronouncements. So I know I went through those kind of quick, but that's just I think we hit the big numbers with the other discussion. So that's the financial statements and the notes of the financial statements. After that, page 51 gets into some supplemental information. And a couple things back here. There's a lot of budget to actual schedules. Page 51 has information related to the original budget, the final budget for the year, the actual revenues and expenses for the year. And then the over-under budget is the difference between the final budget and the actual revenues and expenses. So just big picture, looking at this, total revenues look like they're under budget by about $212,000, and expenditures are under budget by about $75,000. So under budget on expenses, so I think that's important. The page 52 is a note related to the budget also. There's some 10-year trend information on loggers for the next couple of pages. And then I was going to mention page 56 and 57. The city has a lot of other funds. These are classified as non-major funds or smaller funds of the city, so they're grouped together and included in the back of the schedule. So yeah, we didn't talk about all the funds, but I just wanted to mention that all those other funds are included in the report. They're just further in the back. Just looking at these, see on page 57, near the bottom of the page, at other sources and uses, there's, finding issuance of debt and payoff of old debt, which is a payment to an escrow agent, so that's the refinancing. If you refinance your house, you don't get a lot of money, you just pay off one loan and get another loan, so there's a lot of big number activity related to those funds, but no significant changes other than that. So, anyway, so that's some information related to those funds, more budget actual schedules, and that's, what I was gonna talk about related to the city's main audit report. There's two other reports I was gonna go ahead and jump into. The first one I'll mention, it's got the all caps, it says Independent Auditor's Report on Internal Control. And so there's one thing related to this, because if there's this report, because you get your audit done in conformance with government auditing standards, auditors are required to provide an additional report related to internal controls and compliance. And if there was significant deficiencies or material weaknesses, those kinds of problems, we would have to include those in this report. And internal controls are things like checks and balances, sign-offs, policy and procedures, things like that. And compliance is things like, it says in here, compliance with laws, regulation, contracts, provisions, grants. And if there's a significant deficiency or material weakness, to report that. Well, we didn't have any material weaknesses, but we did, because in the next report I was gonna go over, we do have various journal entries that we had to come up with when we did the audit. And so when we get the information from accounting and we find that there's adjustments, and these were primarily related to the, to the refinancing of the debt that the city had. If we have adjustments like that, we're required to report that to the board and include a significant deficiency in this type of report. So there's a one-page report. I won't read it to you on page 3, but that's the basic idea behind that. That's fine. So, then the last report I was going to talk about is, sometimes we call that a management letter or board report, but the first several pages of it have to do with general information related, more information related to an audit. Then page 5 of that, 5 and 6 have the list of adjustments that we developed during the course of the audit. So we report those here. Which I mentioned, the larger ones are primarily related to the refinancing of the debt. And then the last 2 pages are if we have any other comments besides material weaknesses and significant deficiencies. Are there any other recommendations that we had for the city? So that's what the second to last sheet says, and then the last sheet just has one comment related to the additional documentation we recommend for policy and procedures that the city has. So it did add additional procedures for the year. We tried to say something about that. Last year we had noted that there was additional cash receipt documentation we wanted, and that was provided by the city this year, so we saw that. And also we had a comment last year related to some issues related to the city code, and it looked like the city had addressed those. So the city just has this one other comment related to some improvements on the policy. We've talked to the city about these. I believe they're addressing the items for next year. Anyway, so that's the presentation, the 3 reports. Be happy to take any other thoughts or comments, questions.
This is a mammoth undertaking.
Yeah, it's a lot of big numbers, right?
Sources you have to go get.
Yeah. Yeah, there was with the new funds, I didn't talk about public safety, but it was new last year. Part of it started last year was full year this year, then we had the park fund, and we had the new debt to pay off of some of the other lease agreements, and so yeah, there's a lot of activity during this fiscal year.
Yeah, we've been busy.
Yeah. And you got a couple of subsequent events related to additional business, it looks like, so that's fine. It happens, that's good.
I do have a question.
Yep.
With the ARPA money that came in last year, we have to do a special single audit.
Possibly, yeah. It depends on when you qualify the expenditures, and how much it is, so. I can stop with that, but yeah, it depends, you have to add it, so you got to have a MOCAN grant, so if you have to look at all the grants together, now if all the expenditures for all the federal grants are more than $750,000, then yeah, you're supposed to have a single audit. But that depends too, there's a special provision where ARPA money can be excluded and you don't have to do a single audit. If there's a but-for clause, if you didn't have this ARPA money, you don't have to do the single audit. Until you've fully spent the money, then you have to do another special audit of that money. Like, it could be like 2 or 3 years from now. So that's a little bit of a trick question, a trick answer, I guess, but generally you have to have an audit if you spend over $750,000, but there is a special exception to this ARPA money.
Please.
All right, yeah, appreciate it. I know it's a lot to go. If you got any other questions, feel free to let me know. Okay, very good, thank you.
Okay, we have a first reading on Bill 2022-28. Clerk will read it.
Bill 2022-28, an ordinance for the city of Cameron, Missouri to establish a procedure to disclose potential conflicts of interest and substantial interest for certain municipal officials.
I will entertain a motion to pass Bill 2022-28 on a first reading only.
So,
Second?
Discussion?
This is really a housekeeping ordinance. We pass it every year. It's actually only due every other year. If it passes every year, then I don't accidentally forget it. So, it does two things. One part of this, identifies conflicts of interest and, just says that any council member who has a conflict of interest should, recuse themselves from that discussion. And the other part of that is council and appointed staff, which is Steve and I, we all have to file financial disclosure information with the Missouri Ethics Commission annually.
Okay. Any other questions? All those in favor say aye.
aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Bill 2022-28 passes with a vote, vote of 3 in favor and 2 absent. On a first reading only. Okay, we have a first reading on Bill 2022-29. The clerk will read the bill.
Bill 2022-29, an ordinance authorizing the distribution of budgeted funds to the Cameron Library Board for the purpose of improving the library building located in downtown Cameron.
I will entertain a motion to pass Bill 2022-29 on a first reading only. Discuss. Oh, okay. Discussion.
Well, in the budget that we are currently in, last year council had appropriated $50,000 to Cameron Library Board for building enhancements. They are in the process of doing that. They just do not have the construction completed, and that is not, I do not believe that's going to be completed by September 30, the end of our fiscal year. So in order to have to make this a new budget item also, staff recommends advancing the library their $50,000, knowing that they will complete the project. And Joellen Pratt, our librarian, is here if you have further questions or discussion.
The last time I was here, we discussed the fact that we were going to apply for some grants in the fall to expand the potential for the project. And I went back to the board when we were considering whether or not this $50,000 would be available after the first of our fiscal year. And we only had about under 12 weeks to get the project. And when we talked to the engineers and the architects, we were not going to be able to get the materials in that time frame. So when I went to the board and asked them what they would like to do, they asked if we could apply for this ordinance for the distribution of the funds this year so we could continue the project into next year. We will have it done by spring of next year. That's my goal. Any questions?
You've been really good to come to us and let us know individually what's going on. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
And I'm really glad that we had the ability to, I don't know if people know this, I mean, at the end of our fiscal year, that $50,000 that we apportioned for her, allotted for her, would go back in the general fund and that could have been lost. And that's just for people who didn't know, that's why we're discussing this right now. So what we're doing is that we're giving it to you now so that it's out of our bank account and in yours.
Yes, and to be used exclusively
Right.
for this sidewalk renovation, the ADA enhancements to the entrance, and potentially some, window replacement on it.
Right, and it's badly needed if you ever go to the library. And it's inside, it's just fantastic, so well organized, and you've done a super job.
Thank you.
Any questions? Any other questions? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Bill 2022-28 passes on a first reading only with a vote of 3 in favor and 2 absent. Sorry, that was Bill 2022-29.
Yeah, she keeps me straight on these things too,
Well, that's good, 'cause you. Okay, we are at the, our second public participation with the council. The same rules apply as applied at the beginning of the meeting. If anybody has anything that they'd like to say, please come forward.
I'm sorry, it says not to say the same thing, but I really needed to express, my landlord is, Chris Freeman. And he had his kids working there with a contractor, and they made a lot of mistakes. And also there were guns involved with these maintenance men and buying and selling maybe stolen guns. And it was kind of a really precarious situation for the people who lived there. A lot of people didn't know what was going on. And I think I need to let you know that some of the family members that are not connected to the family, they tried to say, but lived in the same homes, were involved with a lot of this problems with the maintenance issues. And, you know, I have floors coming up, I mean, for a year and a half. I've still got my doors that are not repaired for a year and a half. I still got, I was threatened, my wife was threatened. It, just, you know, they asked me, my neighbors, if let's try to get some people, call the police. And they didn't do it, but I did. And then the landlord, you know, even though he's involved with this really badly, he said call the police too, because, you know, he has to protect himself, even though he's in a lot of trouble. But I just want you to know that probably didn't know this was going on. And I lost my wife for 6 months to protect her from situations that were harmful. And there might have been some other issues, you know, that I don't know how they happened. There, you know, there might have been some vandalism. We still got drug-related problems there too. And it's slowing down. People know that they're in trouble, but there's still some people that, you know, they're still doing their stuff, you know. And so it's a harmful situation, and doctors are needed. I mean, I don't think you can throw everybody in, you know, in a place of incarceration, but you do need to learn the lesson, and I do know that there's a count situation. I was told to, I was threatened with my lease a year ago. And no one knows that. And then I was asked to change my affidavit by my landlord because they didn't want to incriminate the contractor or the landlord or his family. And then they threatened my behavior counselor who was trying to help a veteran. I understand that, but I have evidence for that situation that might have to be used with the attorney and stuff. But y'all need to know that sometimes you think people are good, and you even have them come up here and talk, and they're outstanding citizens sometimes. But you don't know what's going on in certain areas, like the veterans over there, where the landlord has another place, has told me that they were planting marijuana in their vegetable gardens, and they had some problems with purchasing some stuff from some individuals or so, but they were using it, and it wasn't confronted. And so, to me, it looks like these outstanding citizens have gotten away with a lot of problems, and y'all don't know nothing about it. You have no idea, but they came up to me and said, you know, we have individuals that are breaking the rules and regulations of our state, and they wanted people on housing through Trim, and Trim's qualifications are, your asset's supposed to be $40,000 or less. I was asked to go to Trim. I was ported from my place to here. I was asked by Trim
We're at 5 minutes.
to do that. Anyway, thank you very much. I'm just saying that there was some things that are not right with the lease agreements that we were supposed to qualify for.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. We now have miscellaneous comments from our staff.
I'm not sure if anybody can possibly forget this with all of the phone calls and text messages and emails, but tomorrow is the primary election, don't forget to go vote.
Nothing further, thank you.
Greg? Steve? Kim? Chief Basher? Chief O'Donnell? Tad? Carmen?
I know, I had to rest the roll. I would just like to say thank you to council for your attendance and your questions during our finance committee meetings, and we have that one more on Wednesday night, so we'll get it wrapped up. Also, the audit report will be on our website tomorrow, and whatever, so it will be out there for public access, so, thank you.
Thank you. Zach?
No ma'am.
Patrick?
Nothing.
Is everybody sitting on the other side of you, Patrick?
Nope, nobody besides this.
Okay. Miscellaneous comments from the council. Mr. Clark, we'll start with you.
I was, thank you. I'm gonna say this audit, I mean, this is not the first time I've had one in my hands, but it's the first one I actually read every word. Because it really does encompass what the city does. If you understand anything about the notes that we're getting and the bonds that we're doing, and, you know, we're trying to keep our roads nice. It's just really good to read if you understand that kind of stuff. It's taken me a little bit, but I'm getting there, and I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. And I don't have anything. I do see that we have executive session on the agenda tonight, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn to executive session by roll.
So,
Second.
I'm fine with that, sorry.
Alexander Williams. Roy Estes. Dennis Carter.
Yes.
Becky Curtis.
Yes.
Julie Osmond.
Yes. We are now in executive